and you want to be profitable in every job, there's still a piece left. And that piece is your communication with your clients, the expectations that have been set for that client. If you have been a yes man the whole time and know your numbers, know your production rate, know you can land the project, but the client's expecting something different than you're currently offering because you just said yes to everything they said so you can get to that budget side, you can get to getting a proposal and a design and all that, you need to know your numbers, your production rate, and you need to be setting expectations for your client with no gray areas. Hello. Welcome to Outer Spaces, a podcast dedicated to empowering landscapers, hardscapers, and outdoor living professionals. I'm Joshua Gillow. My mission through this show is to create a powerful resource for you, someone who is striving to grow their company well past the $1 million line, but might not have all the tools and processes to do so. Here in Outer Spaces, we are passionate about breaking the chains of small mindsets and helping contractors just like you take control of their businesses and their lives. With nearly 3 decades of experience designing, selling, and building six-figure outdoor living spaces, I've made all the mistakes. Starting with $0 in my pocket, and through the grace of God and a ton of hard work, I now own multiple businesses that afford me the time with my family and the lifestyle I've always dreamed of. So join me as I share what I've learned along my journey, strategies, and other contractor success stories right here on the Outer Spaces podcast. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow. And this week on the podcast, we have Wes Zimmerman from Synced Up on, and we're going to talk about something that most of you might think is crazy. It's, can you be profitable on every project? We're going to share this week how more outdoor living contractors and professionals are achieving the impossible. So guys, if you want to become more profitable on each and every project, this is the episode for you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. Your host, Joshua Gillow. And this week, we have Weston Zimmerman on. And if you guys have been living under a rock, maybe you haven't heard of him, but I think most people have heard of Weston Zimmerman over at Synced Up. So Wes, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. It's good to be back with you. I really enjoy our conversations. I don't know how many times I've been on your show now and how many times we've met at trade shows, but this is awesome.
No, I appreciate it, man. And today we're going to be hitting a really fun topic here. Profitability on every project, Weston. Is it possible? How can outdoor living professionals achieve the impossible? That's our focus. But before we get to that, tell us a little bit about yourself for anybody out there that might not have heard of who Weston Zimmerman is.
Well, I live in central Pennsylvania. We joke that it's Podunkville, PA. I worked at a landscaping company called Tussey Landscaping for 15 years. I started there when I was 16. Before I even had my driver's license, I biked to work for 2 years, 12 miles one way.
Wow.
And I loved working outdoors and I loved creating beautiful things. We had a big property when I was a kid at home and I wanted to do more of that for my job. So I wanted the job and so I did it. But anyway, really long story. I started there just as a laborer and worked my way up through being a foreman, managing a service, like the maintenance service team, and eventually becoming the marketing director there. I started a YouTube channel and Instagram and all of that I now have handed off to the rest of the Tussey team. And along that journey, we were growing as a landscape company. When I started there, it was just your dime a dozen. At the time I started, it was a $700,000 landscape company. So, and it had been in business already for 16 to 17 years. So wow. To give you perspective. Mm-hmm. And over the next 15 years while I was there, the team grew very quickly. Steve and Matt, the owners really did a really good job of delegating and bringing in key people. I was one of them on the marketing, as well as just the overall systems and processes behind the company. Like I was addicted to the achievement of solving a kink in a process. Yeah. And through that, that's how Synced Up was born. We were just always trying to do something better, solve a problem more efficiently. We used products that were on the marketplace, but what we found is that none of them handled the full cycle from the design consultation all the way through the estimating and the proposal to the tracking the job and then job costing it all under one roof. Today, there's more products available. So it's not like Synced Up is the only product that does both estimating and job costing today, but we're really going after helping the smaller contractor, like from $250K to $5 million, I'm going to say, like not enterprise, but the $250K to $5 million business have the accessibility to these estimating and job costing tools in their tool belt so that they're actually making money. And we'll dive into it more, but lately I've been kind of coining a phrase that, hey, there's ultimately 2 profit killers for contractors, and that's what we solve. So anyway, really long story short, Nothing more than a glorified hillbilly foreman from central Pennsylvania that ended up building a software, and now I run a software company.
I love it, dude. What's the chance, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. So Wes, I'd like to dial in here and get focused on our topic for the day, profitability in every project. I know, I've been in this business almost 30 years now. And in the very beginning, you get your EIN number from the government and they say, all right, have fun, and kick you in the ass and say, go make some money, right? So you can pay some taxes. They don't give you anything. They don't give you business training. They don't give you any kind of basic math. They don't give you any of those things. So we just go out and keep trying and thinking the next one is going to be better. We did that for years and years. And it's probably something you guys did over at Tussey as well. Just trying to maybe we'll make it up on the next one. Maybe we'll make it up on the next one. Or we did really well this time. Great. Let's go buy something. And then we lose on the next project. So what would be ideal today would be to talk about how you found throughout this process, your journey of becoming more profitable on every project. And I believe, and we're going to discuss this today, but I believe that clarity creates that certainty, clarity of many different 100%. Things. So I'd love to tap into you to think of what kind of clarity do we need as an outdoor living industry that would ensure us profitability in every job?
Well, there's a couple different rabbit holes you could go down into. You could go down into the confidence piece, like clarity gives you confidence. Mm-hmm. You could go down into the math piece. You could go down into tracking your stuff piece. There's a couple different angles to it, but to your point, 100%. If you don't have confidence, you will cave. You will not. Yep. If you don't have clarity, you won't have the confidence, which means you won't be able to stand firm and ask for the prices you need to ask for. Now, what prices do you need to ask for? That's a different question. Yep. And the big thing that is really difficult for most contractors is how do I come up with a formula for my overhead recovery? When my insurance goes up, I add a marketing agency to my company. I hire an office admin for the first time. They're not doing billable work out in the field, but I have to pay them. What does that do to my pricing? What does that have to do to my rates? And what a lot of people end up doing, the reality is they'll start they might sit down and do some math, or they look to the left and I'm better than that company in town, or they look to the right and I'm not as good as that company in town. So I'll just go in the middle. And it's based on nothing more than an emotional self-worth assessment. Yes. And you have to get away from that, because that emotional self-worth assessment is exactly where lack of confidence and lack of clarity lives.
Yep. And
so for you to move beyond that, you have to solve this. And really what it is just, we call it building a budget. You can do this for free online. Building a budget, go to synced.com. There's a free budgeting tool there. And what that really is telling the budgeting system every dollar your business spends. It does the math to figure out, okay, cool, your cost per hour is this, your overhead is this, so we have to mark that up to achieve a break even. Now we've solved the math problem. That, the thing I alluded to earlier, there's 2 profit killers for contractors. The first one is the math problem. You're not recovering your overhead accurately. Somewhere your math is messed up, and you think you should be making money on this job, but you're not, and you don't know it until way too late. The second piece, you could completely solve the math problem, have perfect on paper math, and still be getting it wrong. How? Well, if I bid a job for 100 man hours and the job actually takes me 150, I still lost money. It doesn't matter how perfect my math was. Yep. So what the second profit killer is exactly that. I call it the resources problem. You go over on resources like labor, material, equipment, something like that. Yep. And the only way to solve that is to track. The problem is we don't like to do disciplined stuff like tracking, blah, 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 blah. So that's where Synced Up strives to make that as easy as possible and lower the friction it takes to track accurately, so that you can know on every single job whether you made money or not. And the thing is okay, this is the way my brain works. I'm going to move away from the emotional self-worth assessment and solve the math problem. Cool. I got that right. Now the math on paper is right. Now the only game is making sure I'm estimating the correct amount of resources, labor, material, et cetera, in every estimate. If I get that right, then I have predictable profits every time. And so job costing or tracking tells me when I got the math right, but I got the resources wrong, meaning I took 150 hours to do something other instead of 100 hours. Okay, cool. Now I have the data. Make the mistake once and then correct it on your next estimate for similar work. The hopeless cycle, or the vicious cycle, is when you do the math thing and you're like, cool, I'm done, I fixed it, but then you continuously always bid your jobs for 20% not enough of hours, or always under on materials, but you never track it. So you never know it until your bank account starts depleting itself. And you're like, what in the world is going wrong? Like, why am I not making profit predictably? And that's why. It's either a math problem or a resources problem. And so it bleeds right over into if you solve those two problems, you are not going to suffer from lack of clarity and confidence. Because you're going to know. It's not going to be a gut feeling. Yeah, I feel like I made money. Okay, well, translate that feeling to dollars and cents for me, please. I'll wait.
Yep. Can you buy groceries with that?
Yeah, exactly.
No, you can't buy groceries with a feeling. So, I mean, you were just spot on with that. And that, again, listeners out there, if you're listening, you're like, I don't know each project. I'm just hoping and praying every time that it works out and that this time is going to be the right time. And maybe if I win most of them and make, profit on most of my projects, it can make up for the ones that I messed up on, the ones I didn't add enough hours in or enough materials in or whatever it might be, right? The problem is exactly how I used to run the business years ago, 20 some years ago, is the spray and pray method, right? You spray all these different proposals out there and you pray you might going to be profitable on some of them. And the thing is that the confidence level, to your point, goes way, way, way down. The certainty of you having the right numbers. So having the clarity around the numbers, knowing that, hey, we've done a budget, we have the numbers, we know how much we need to charge per hour. Now it's getting around your own mindset of what you're worth. You've talked about that many times, but it's about what you're worth, because if that budget for that project comes in at $53,000 and Mrs. Jones and you've only talked about a $40,000 budget, now all of a sudden there's a conflict. There's I want to make Mrs. Jones happy, but I also know what I need to make. So let's just split the difference, Wes. Let's just make it in the middle. The problem is that split is split directly out of profit. It's not split out of Mrs. Jones's side. You know what I mean? It's split out of your profit side. So you're working for free or basically at a cost in order to do that project. And that's the thing where we have to be very careful as an industry that we don't let feelings override our logic, because if we don't have a business that's creating a profit, we can't pay our employees, we can't grow, we can't serve more people. This isn't, there's nothing wrong with making money. There's nothing wrong with being wickedly profitable. No. But if it's all for greed, that's one thing. But most of us in our industry, that's not what it's about.
Yeah, I rarely run into a greedy contractor. That's not the problem. It's more, and the tricky part is the whole thing of, I want to be nice to Mrs. Jones and, oh, she's my grandmother's best friend or whatever. Like, at the end of the day, like, this is one thing I've learned after helping hundreds, if not close to thousands of contractors solve this problem, is that, at the end of the day, I can help you pragmatically, Synced Up can help you pragmatically solve the problem, the math problem, the tracking problem, the resources problem, the production rates, all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, that's all we can do. The rest is up to you. Like if you're going to self-sabotage and say, oh, but she's my aunt's best friend and da-da-da. Yep. That's on you, man. Like, I can't fix that for you. That's in your own head. That's a battle in your own head. And there's a guy in our local market here, one of the nicest guys you would meet, extremely hard worker. His employees like him. He is so entrenched into this mindset of being nice, and I can't charge more than whatever his emotional self-assessment worth is, that the reality becomes, he thinks he's being nice, but then the reality on the other end of that is, I'm sorry, I'm not going to name names, but I'm just going to tell you the reality. He can't pay his vendors on time. Yeah. I know he's not doing well financially, personally. Yep. But yet, for whatever reason, he would rather choose that reality and scratch his itch of being nice than he would let the math do the work. And then a phrase I've coined before is like, do the budget and then go find the people that can pay the prices you need to be profitable as quickly as possible. Get to the no's as fast as you can so you can get the yeses.
That's right. That's right.
And so, I mean, the whole thing of being nice and the emotional battle of, I want to give him a discount. Like, you're not serving anyone, not even the customer you think you're being nice to when you do that, because what will inevitably happen in the real world is something will come along in the project where, oh man, if I just had a little bit of extra fluff in this project, I could spend an extra half a day and really do a nice thing to the client. But there is zero budget. I need the down payment for the next job ASAP because payroll is tomorrow. Yeah. And so you end up actually cutting corners on the execution and the production side because you're in a vicious cycle. And I would rather play my be nice game in under promising and over delivering rather than trying to meet at the promise level and then I'm struggling to deliver.
100%, dude. And you're so right, because you have to make a choice in your heart, listeners. When you're out there and you're saying, all right, Mrs. Jones, we're going to give her a discount because she's my aunt's best friend. You have to make a decision whether you're willing to rob your children and your family of time and resources. You're robbing them to give to Mrs. Jones because in the moment you feel like she's more important. Yeah, she's more important than your own 100%. Children.
I forget somewhere. I think
about that, listeners. Think about that.
I was at an event. I forget where I saw this, but it was like a thing. Like the next time you're tempted to give a discount, pull out a photo of your family sitting around the dinner table. Look at them and tell them why you're giving the discount. Yeah. If you can't tell them, there's your answer.
Yep. 100%, dude. So yeah, I mean, it's such a powerful thing, but you know, when it comes down to it, like I mentioned in the beginning, when you get your EIN number, you don't get trained on sales. You don't get trained on communication. You don't get trained on numbers, budgeting, and all that stuff is just, we didn't sign up for that stuff. When we start a business, Wes, it's like, we just want to build cool shit. And then all of a sudden we figure out we've got to market. We've got to find clients. We have to pay for all this equipment that it takes. We've got to pay these employees. We've got to give them a compelling future. We've got to be a leader. We've got to be a father and a husband. We've got to be all of these things and try to make a profit. It's a lot of plates to juggle. So the easiest path is just to do what our gut, just go after feelings. Like, I feel like I give her a discount. That would fill that project nicely. Or, you know what, that would actually stroke my ego a little bit because it's a corner lot and they know the other people. So that could lead into more work. We tell ourselves such bullshit stories. Mm-hmm. The reality is, if we're not focused on each and every project, how we can bring the highest value to that project with certainty based on the fact that we know our budget, which it might take a little time to figure that out. It's time well invested. If you know that you've got to charge X per hour when you're out working, and you know that by an actual fortified budget that shows what's going on, that the certainty that comes with that and the confidence that comes knowing that, hey, $53,000 project is $53,000. If you want to drop that price, we need to figure out how we're going to change scope, change materials, or if Mrs. Jones is going to go out and cut all her trees down before we get there. Like, what are we going to do in order to make that happen? But we're not going to change our price in order to meet theirs because our price has been carefully considered. And you mentioned pricing, budgeting, all of that. You mentioned about making sure you know production rates, two absolute key things. Now, if both of those are dialed in and you want to be profitable in every job, there's still a piece left. And that piece is your communication with your clients, the expectations that have been set for that client. If you have been a yes man the whole time and know your numbers, know your production rate, know you can land the project, but the client's expecting something different than you're currently offering because you just said yes to everything they said so you can get to that budget side, you can get to getting a proposal and a design and all that, and they're expecting this amazing backyard with all of these features, and you have it simplified so you can meet numbers, and you can meet budgets, your numbers might be spot on, but if their expectations are way off, you're going to fight them and lose money that way too. So there is the trifecta. You need to know your numbers, your production rate, and you need to be setting expectations for your client with no gray areas. It's got to be black and white, and they have to agree to black and white. If you leave gray because you're just not confident enough or you don't have enough certainty in your deliverable, holy crap, that gray area is going to jump out and rip the profit out of your hands at the last second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When Mrs. Jones comes back and says, you know what, I thought the patio was going to be 12 feet. It's only 10 and the project is complete. This is when you're doing your walkthrough. Wait a minute here. The guys must have messed up. They must not have been able to read that too. It's a 0. Oh crap. Now what? Now you're going back and tearing that side of that whole project out to move it out an additional 2 feet just to meet your contract. And you're like, wait a minute here. So we made profit up until that point. Or it's the wrong paver or the wrong overall pattern, or it's not exactly the way it was in the design because your guys got creative on site because you don't have enough oversight out there. So you can have the numbers right, you can have production right, but if you don't have clarity, absolute clarity, black and white communication with your clients, setting expectations, delivering on or above, that's the last piece, man. You can lose a lot right there.
Yeah. Yeah, the communication can take the whole thing down. Meaning, even if you have the numbers right, even if you have the resources right, the communication piece can take. It's a 3-legged stool. Like you have to have that, and expectation setting, being clear with your client. Like, hey, we started the conversation saying that you want to spend $30,000, then they tell you everything they want, and you realize they have a $200,000 vision. Where are you going to stop that conversation and say, hey, I just want to check? And it's not. it's not the client's fault. They don't know what things cost, typically. It's your job to educate them. And what I mean by that is you are the expert. And when they say they want a $30,000 budget and they're painting a $60,000 vision to you on that consultation, okay, I am now the expert on site to help them achieve their vision either in 30 grand, and help them make educated and informed decisions on what to cut, what to minimize, what to phase out, I am the person to help them do that, help the client do that, right? It's not just like, well, you said you want a 30, what you're asking for is 60, done. It's just like people are used in our consumerist society they're used to having, massive discounts. You go into Kohl's and everything's 50% off. Mm-hmm. That's the society we live in. Construction doesn't work that way. But they don't know that.
Nope.
So they might think asking for a 5% discount is perfectly reasonable. For you, it completely removes the reason or the incentive of doing the job. I'd rather go fishing on the lake with my kids than work for free,
Yep.
And so the communication piece it's a huge piece. And oftentimes what I see is contractors that come to us and they become really good at their numbers and their production rates, but they then need to work on themselves, their own mentality, their own mindset, their own communication skills. That whole thing I said of get through the no's as fast as you can so you can get to the yeses quicker. That's the outcome of a good communication skill.
Yep.
And that's where they have to do the work. And if you end up solving the math problem, the know your numbers problem, and you don't like the numbers it gives you, well, you have one of two choices. Either do more work without either produce more billable work without increasing expenses in your business. So you can, raise more and produce more funds without increasing your costs, or cut costs. It's a mathematical problem. We can't argue with it.
Yeah. It's true. And so many, including myself, and I can say this out loud because this was me, work on hope. Like we're high on hopium all the time. Like, oh, the next one's going to solve everything. All right. Just constantly hoping that the next one's going to be great and that we're going to that's going to fix all our problems without and running the business on feeling like, oh, I have a feeling this is going to be a good year. Because when you're looking at sales numbers and the numbers are good and you're like, wow, great. We're going to hit $1 million this year. We want to hit 10 million, whatever it's going to be. We are on track. We are ahead of the game. This is amazing. We love talking about this. When I get the team together, look at these numbers. It's amazing. You guys are doing a great job. That's easy. Yeah. But Wes, when things aren't going well, Q1 is slow. Your leads aren't firing off. You're not moving them out. You're spending a ton of time and nothing's happening and you're missing the mark right off the bat. First quarter, you're down 50% and you're like, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to, because I just want to hope and pray that everything's going to be fine. And there is power in that, but there's also power in actually having a strategy. Knowing those numbers, knowing that if you're going to lose a project, it's because that project wasn't a good fit for you, not because you guesstimated that project. And then you told a client kind of a big gray idea of what it could be. And then you're like, well, then you're sitting here beating yourself up. You're like, but if I knew my numbers, maybe it wouldn't be as high. And if I wasn't in the gray and I was in black and white, maybe I could have communicated better with them. And then you sit there and beat yourself up and you're like, oh man, I'm just not good at this. I just want to build stuff. Why do I got to talk to people? Why do I got to sell stuff? Why do I got to know my numbers? Why do I got to have budgets? I don't want that. I didn't sign up for that. I signed up to build cool shit. And you know what? This sucks. But the reality is it doesn't have to. That's the cool part. You've solved that problem for the industry, Wes. And I thank you every day for that. You don't know that, but I thank you every day for solving the problem because I believe that our industry, the men and women in our industry, work way too hard for way too little money. And you are helping solve that for the industry because now there's only I don't really want to know my numbers. That's why I'm not working with Weston. At this point, it's a choice.
Yeah. It's not like 30 years ago where there was not an access to information or solutions. Right. Today, in the age of the technology that we live in, like access to the information and access to the answers is no longer the bottleneck. It's the battle is fought between the ears. Do you want it or don't you? Do you want to know the truth or don't you?
Do you want to develop yourself into the leader that can take your business to profitability? Or do you just want to be a craftsman that builds cool stuff and sometimes you make money and sometimes you rob from your family? Yeah. Your choice. What do you want to do?
And, to your point about the whole thing of like, oh man, maybe if I would have known my numbers, maybe I could have communicated better. Like the agony is in losing a job because of gray communication, like you said. If you lose a job in black and white communication, there's a tremendous peace in that because know if you'd have signed up for that job, you'd have lost money and there's no agony at all.
Nope.
You're like, I'm glad I didn't waste any more time on that.
Yep.
You know, and in the moment when you're dealing with the client, you're serving them the best you can. Like, hey, you could do this. I could refer you to that guy. Maybe he can give you something, but ultimately here's the reality of your situation. If you want a swimming pool, minimum 150 grand, you know, and they were maybe thinking 50. It's like, sorry, I'm sorry to be the bearer of the bad news, but I want to serve you the best I can. Here's the truth in black and white, you know.
100%. And that's people respect clarity. They respect leadership. They respect that stuff. Your teams, your family, your clients, they all do. And you don't get clarity if you're guessing and high on hopium constantly.
That's right.
That's you can't. All you're going to do is move around in a constant state of unknowing. And that's what drives the saboteurs inside. That's what drives those negative voices. Like, you could have done it better. Why didn't you say this? You heard that on that podcast. Why didn't you say that? Why didn't you spend the time and do your budget? Oh, budgets are scary. Like, oh my God, I don't even know my numbers. Like, I don't even know what's going on there. If I looked at them, they'd be too scared to look at it. And then I feel like I'd be under control of some sort where I'd have to charge something and I can't get that in my market. So this whole business thing falls apart. And all this time I wasted building this business, and I've got to go back to my family and say, I got to go bankrupt because this is what happens in the mind. The story, the bullshit that goes on in the mind. And if you just stop, the way you get around that, listeners, is you stop that thing in its tracks by saying clarity is what dispels that monster. Clarity is what puts that flashlight into the darkness where you see there's really nothing in that closet. There's no monster in there. There's nothing under the bed. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Yeah. So when you stop the train and say, I am no longer going to tolerate this unknowing, that's where your stress and overwhelm is coming from, is that unknowing. When you know, when you have clarity around your budget, around your numbers, how to communicate with your clients, when that client says no and you have to walk away from that project, to Wes's point, you're going to feel peace, not frustration. You're not going to beat yourself up. You're going to be like, there's no way we could have done it for less.
Yeah. And there's peace in knowing that you didn't waste any more time or even waste the client's money on saying, yeah, I can. And then you deliver a turd because, you know, but you know, I just want to say to the thing of, people, like when we go on these podcasts or whatever, and we talk about budgeting, I get a sense that people feel like, oh my goodness, I'd have to sit down in an office for a week and become an accounting geek and talk to my accountant. I hate that stuff. Yeah. No. You can figure this out. You can do this in an hour. Get on a Zoom call with our team, and in 1 hour, we can solve this for you. Yeah. It's not huge. A big deal. It's not that hard. And so literally in an hour, we can change your life in that regard. And I have helped contractors plug in the numbers. We get to the final overview tab of their budget sheet, and it's a really sad story. They're losing money. But you know what they feel? They feel relief because now they finally know. To the idea of shining a flashlight into the dark closet, now they finally know, and there's relief because now you know what to go fix.
Yes.
You can actually strategize. Yeah. You can actually be like, well, I could sell that piece of equipment. I could replace it. I could rent that one. I'm not using it that much. You know, there's all kinds of solutions that come popping into your own head. You already know the answer. Yeah. You just need to shine the light on the issue.
I love it. So good. And once you get that closet figured out that there's nothing, no monsters in there that you always thought was in there, then you take that flashlight and you go under the bed and you work on production, right? Exactly. You look at, there's no monsters there. Then you go around the corner in that dark corner and you realize, you know what? It's only communication. I just got to learn how to communicate better. Yes. Clear, black and white. So when you have those 3 legs of that stool solid in place, everything changes. Yep. Everything changes. And all of a sudden your business is a pleasure to be around. You're not overwhelmed and stressed because you have certainty. Because clarity creates that. That's what it is. So anybody out there that is just stressed out, overwhelmed right now, especially this time of year, sit back and say, do you have those 3 things? Well, a lot of clarity around those 3 things. Do you have clarity around your budget? Do you have clarity around your production rates? And do you have clarity around how you communicate your offering so it's black and white and not gray to your clients and your team? If the answer is no to some of those, that's where you got to get your flashlight and shine it into. And once you fix those 3, profitability in every project is a much, much, much higher probability. And it's very possible to do. Now, there's always things that happen in the world. Different things happen on projects. But at the end of the day, your chance of success is 10x from what it is right now.
There's always real life. There's always a chance that something is going to come bite you in the butt and you're going to lose money on a particular job. But the key is to make that mistake once.
One time.
And not only make that mistake once, but you learn from it and you know exactly what you're not going to do next time. And you know exactly what you are going to do next time. That's, you're never going to escape making a mistake once. Nobody's going to shame you for making a mistake once. What is a vicious cycle is repeating the same mistake over and over and over again and not even knowing it, but just feeling the pain. Like you look in your bank account, where's all the money? Feeling the pain and not knowing what to do to fix it. That's the hopeless part of it.
That's very true. And, we're going to wrap up with this thought. So many of us, including myself, my first years in outdoor living, I couldn't believe that people would actually have $5, $10, $15, or $20,000 sitting in a bank account waiting to be spent on outdoor living. Like, this is 30 years ago, and I couldn't believe it because I didn't, dude. I had no money in the bank. I was paycheck to paycheck at best. And I was like, how can they afford this stuff? They write a check for this. I thought they used a credit card because that's all I knew how to use because I didn't have any money. And then it's like, so we have to be very careful of our poor money mindset or our money mindset and how we bring it to the table and understanding what people value and what they don't. And whether you value it or not really doesn't matter as much as how your clients value what you're doing, right? So we have to be in the perspective of our prospect. We have to be thinking about it from their side. And that's the interesting part about this. So don't go into this thinking like, oh, numbers are so scary. Maybe they are to you, but think about how much you're robbing your family and your team of being the best versions of themselves and having the best experience in life, all because of your fears. What if you were to face those fears, take that flashlight into those dark spaces, think about the man or woman you would show up to your family and your team, your church, your life with, when you have that clarity and certainty that you know what you're doing. You can not only build cool shit, you can do it profitably. Think about that is just amazing to think about having both and not having to sacrifice one for the other.
Amen. That's true words.
Well, Wes, I appreciate you coming on today and unraveling this and talking about trying to create profitability in every project and how, because I know some of the outdoor living professionals out there are doing it. I talk to them. Some of them are doing it. The ones that are training actively in their budget, constantly watching that. The ones that are actively watching their production rates and fixing and adjusting because it's never ending process. And the ones that are learning with us how to communicate or with others how to communicate, how to set that black and white vision for the space, not being in a gray. They're the ones that I'm hearing like, man, we're like each project, we're making like great money. I'm spending more time with my family on vacations that I can finally afford. Places my wife has always wanted to go. And now we can say yes to that. And we're doing it. And I can take the time off and the business is starting, just little bits and pieces starting to run on itself. The guys are more responsible in the field because they have clarity about what has to be done. All of it happens when you start focusing on taking that flashlight into the dark places. So Wes, thank you for coming on here today. I know before we peace out, I would love for you to let us know about your event coming up here in October.
Absolutely. Yeah. October 3rd and 4th, we do an annual event called the Contractor Summit. It's going to be in Dayton, Ohio this year. We always do a business spotlight. This year's business spotlight is Jeremy Swihart from J Squared Outdoor. Incredible pool and outdoor living contractor. You don't want to miss this one. And we're also bringing in some great motivational speakers, keynote speakers. Greg Crabtree from Simple Numbers, if you've ever heard that, read that book.
Great guy.
And of course, our Synced Up team will be contributing some content. But no, it's a great event for the Synced Up community, or the contractor community rather. And it's a blend of business methodology and thinking like this, what we just talked about on the podcast. Some motivational stuff, inspiring you to greater heights, and some practical stuff like the Simple Numbers stuff. So, and then go spend some time hanging out and having good conversations around a campfire. We're relaxing and having dinner the one evening there at Jeremy Swihart's business where his new shop is. So if you want to be in a room of people that are in the grind of business just like you are, this is the place to be. You can go to syncedup.com. Just Google Synced Up Contractor Summit and you'll find it. And I also want to just say before we hang up, like, guys, if you're afraid of this stuff, if you haven't flicked on the flashlight yet and you're willing to get on a Zoom call for an hour, it will change your life. It's like planting a tree. Every time we've done this for someone, they're like, I wish I'd have done this from day one. But there's this fear lurking in the shadows. I'm afraid to know the truth. Yeah. Just rip off the Band-Aid, find the truth, and we'll get you on the right trajectory. And you can do that. I'll give you the link, Josh. I'll give you the link we can put in the show notes, and They can just book their Zoom call there.
Appreciate it. I wish I had my mic wasn't attached to this boomer. I'd drop it for you. Anyway, listeners, thanks for tuning in again. And again, when it comes to Weston, these guys are changing the game when it's knowing your numbers. There's no excuse anymore not to know what your budget is, what your production rates are, all of that stuff. So the main lesson today is that clarity creates certainty. You got to remove the gray areas of your business. Those dark areas are the ones that are sucking profit. They're siphoning it right out of your business because of uncertainty. Once you claim certainty around those things, everything changes. So Weston, thanks for tuning in. And next week, guys, Weston's back and we're going to be focusing on change orders. Are they good or bad? Tune in next week to find out. See you next week.